So you're thinking about moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, and maybe like some of my clients, you're moving here from out of state. We get a lot of people in the Carolinas that are moving down from New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, or even out west out from California. So if you're one of those people that are moving here from out of state, today's video is for you. It's the ultimate relocation guide. So stick around, we're gonna get after it right now. If this is your first time to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe and bell notification so you can be the first to learn about the market conditions right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. My name is Dean Hardy. I'm a local realtor, host of this channel, team lead, and I get calls, text messages, emails every single day from people like you, and I absolutely love it. So if you're thinking about moving here, whether it's 9 days or 90 days, go ahead and reach out to me today. My contact information is right below in the description. You can go ahead and book a Zoom call. I would love to help you and your family make a nice, smooth move right here to Charlotte, North Carolina. So one of my favorite quotes is by Abraham Lincoln. And what he says is, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to spend 4 of those hours sharpening the axe. And this is really the heart behind this video, is if we can get the preparation piece right prior to the move, everything else just seems to work just that little bit smoother. So before we get into the first point, I'm just going to give a prerequisite, which I think is probably the most important thing in the entire relocation process, and it's mindset. There's things that we can control, and there's things that we just cannot control. So if we can control the controllables and then leave margin outside of those controllables, things do happen. Dates shift. Unexpected events just pop up. It's life, it just does. But the controllables, if you can control that piece and don't worry about everything else, just be prepared for the unexpected, things just go smoothly. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the first point. All right, so the first phase we're going to be talking about is the research phase. Now, this typically starts around 12 weeks out, but if you're a planner, that's not going to be enough time for you. So go ahead and use your own judgment here. But just for the context of this video, we're going to start around that 12-week window. And this is probably one of the most important pieces right here, the research. So you're starting to look, maybe you're searching around on YouTube or some other channels like mine or somebody else's, that you're starting to get a feel for what Charlotte is actually like. Then you're starting to consider lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle do you envision by moving right here to Charlotte? Maybe you're leaving another state that the lifestyle is completely different. Maybe you're coming here for work. Maybe you want to be in the South for less restrictions that have been going on over the past couple of years. Whatever that might be, the lifestyle is key. And the housing that we have here in Charlotte can really dictate and go a long way. So just give you a couple of examples. So if you want to be in an urban lifestyle, meaning you want to be uptown Charlotte, you want to be in like condominiums or a townhouse, you want to be able to walk to work, restaurants, everything right there. You're in the heart of everything, all the sporting activities and events that we've got, concerts, etc. You can have that. Now, if you want to be in more of a historic area like the Dilworth area, we've got those two real short commutes up to uptown Charlotte if you need to be there. A little bit further out, we've got some real funky, like Noda is a good example, some really good vibe neighborhoods if you want more of that artsy vibe kind of scenario. But maybe you want to be in the suburbs. Maybe you want to be like in a subdivision. Maybe you want Charlotte to be easily accessible, 20, 30, 40 minutes away, whatever that time frame is for you. But you want to have access to Charlotte, but you might not necessarily want to be in Charlotte, if that makes sense. So we've got that for you as well. So I get a lot of people that are coming here, they want those suburbs, or maybe a school district's important to you. You've got a young family of school age and you want to go ahead and make sure that your kids are enrolled in one of the strongest school districts. That could dictate whereabouts in the Charlotte area you're looking for. Gated communities, maybe you want to be on a lake. I mean, literally the options are just there's hundreds of different options depending on what you're actually looking for. Gated communities, like I say, but maybe you want a good community feel. You want to be in a smallish town within the greater Charlotte area. You want pool access for your kids. All these things can be important. So that really dictates the lifestyle that you really be looking for. So go ahead and start to do some research. It's never really too early, like I say, but I would say around that 12-week window is really when you want to start to get dialed in. Once you've got some ideas, it's a good idea at this point is to start to reach out to people and speak to as many professionals as you can in the area. You can obviously reach out to me. As I mentioned, my contact information is right below. But also, if you have kids, a good example is start to reach out to some of the schools, have conversations with either principals or some of the teachers just to get a gauge on what their curriculum is, see what your comfort level is like in certain schools. If you have kids, again, maybe some sports activities, maybe they play soccer, baseball, whatever their sport might be, you might want to start to research some clubs just to see what activities are around and some fun things to do. Whatever really is your kind of what your niche is, what you like to do, what you enjoy to do, start to just do some research and just see if it's available. Maybe if you want to start to pick up some new sports and you just want to, like, say, golf is a good example. A lot of people golf here and play pickleball, it seems like, here in Charlotte. Maybe you want to start seeing what kind of opportunities are around here for living in golf communities or living in a community that has either tennis courts or pickleball. I mean, these are things that you really start to paint a picture, start to create what you want your future life to look like here when you do make that move. So next I will talk about is financing. This is a key piece, especially if you're coming down here and you plan to buy a house. So if you have a house to sell where you're moving from, I might not be able to help you, but if you do want to reach out to me, I do have a strong network. If you're looking for a local agent, it might not be me that can help you out, especially if it's outside of the Charlotte area, but I do have networks that I could probably refer you to a strong agent. So if you're not sure of an agent, go ahead and by all means reach out to me. But also on the financing piece, if you do have that house to sell, obviously you got to start to get it prepped and ready to list for sale. But you've also got to start to consider about the financing piece as far as pre-approvals. Reach out to a local lender, start to get that pre-approval process started for the purchase of your new house. And you want to be asking this professional questions like, can I support two mortgages? Meaning, while one property is being sold, can you support that second mortgage on the purchase of your new house, or do you need to wait until you close on one? And if so, that's fine. A lot of people do it that way. Then we can start to paint a picture of aligning close dates on the sale of your house to the purchase and close on the purchase of your new house to make sure that they all align up, because that's very important. I get a lot of clients that close on their house out of state and buy in the new state on the same day. So these are options for you, but just kind of get a gauge on what your financial picture kind of looks like. Obviously the dollar amount, so you can kind of give you an idea on what you're looking for as far as price point. Now, I always recommend as well to get more than one quote on the pre-approval. Speak with more than one lender. So I get a lot of people that typically gravitate towards national lenders when they're moving out of state because they know it will be covered in that area. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the chances are a local broker, a local mortgage profession can actually help you probably get a better rate than you could with, let's say, a national bank, let's say like Bank of America. They're here in Charlotte, so I'm going to pick on them. But we do have local lenders that will probably give you a much better deal. People that are like invested in the communities that you're living in. So again, feel free just to reach out to me. I've got a couple of guys that I work with, know and trust, that I'm happy to share that information for you. All right, and also moving, that's a huge thing as far as moving companies. These guys are typically booked out months in advance. So you want to start to reach out to some local moving companies. If you come in long distance, of course, or short distance, just reach out to them if you're planning to hire a company. These guys, like I say, they can be backed up. So you want to reach out to these guys in this same like 12-week window because you need to get something scheduled. On a word of caution, you're probably going to need them sooner than you actually think you're going to need them as far as scheduling it. So that's probably one of the first things that I would highly recommend you to do. Make sure you get that. If you're renting, maybe you don't even own a house yet and you're renting somewhere else. Most rental companies, property management companies, they want at least 30 days notice. So just go ahead and highlight that on your calendar just so you can move forward with them accordingly. And also, I get a lot of people that need storage, so long-term or short-term storage. Go ahead and make sure you start planning all the stuff that you're moving with. Are you going to transport it all? Are you going to sell some of the stuff, your furniture? Do you need storage when you get here? Maybe you want to rent for a few months before you start to buy. So start to consider that option there as well. All right, so next up, I would really go start to do some research on cost of living. Now, I've done a couple of videos before, and I'll put the links below in the description, but here's kind of the spoiler alert for it. Charlotte is 13% less than the national average for cost of living. So that's gonna take into consideration like your housing, your utilities, healthcare, groceries, all of those things combined. Now, depending on where you're coming from, if you're coming out west from California or you're moving down from New York, it's probably going to be, I would go out on a limb here and say it's probably going to be more than 13% as far as the cost of living. It's probably going to see a greater impact there. Property taxes, of course, here is a huge one as well. So kind of start to do a little bit of research there and just to see how far your dollar stretches. All right, so the last thing I'm really going to talk about on this research phase is if you are getting transferred to Charlotte with a job, make sure you connect with your HR department. Go ahead and ask them for a transfer letter. You will definitely need the letter when you're speaking with your finance guys. So on the pre-approval process, they will always ask for that. You might not need it initially, but just have it in your back pocket. Especially if you're moving and you're starting to pack a bunch of things away. You don't want that to be something that's packed away and you don't have access to it. So go ahead and reach out to the HR department, save a copy of it, PDF, so you have that available and be able to send there. Now, if you're moving with a new company, let's just say you got an offer of a job offer and you're moving here to Charlotte for that, make sure you get that offer letter again. Keep that in a PDF so you have readily accessible to send to the people that you need. Now, if it's a smaller or a mid-sized company, not all the time that they will actually send you an offer letter, but it's imperative that you ask for it. One, for you, your situation, just to make sure you have everything in writing. But the second thing is a lender's going to ask for it at some point, so make sure you have that handy. All right, so before we just move on from the transfer, I do think it's real critical is if you are getting transferred, go ahead and see if you can start to negotiate some of the costs into the move for the new position, either the new position with the same company or a brand spanking new position. Most companies will offer some kind of reload package, but I would definitely negotiate that on the front end because let's face it, moving's not cheap. It can be expensive, and you want to make sure that you get the best possible deal from your current or your new employer. All right, and the final point before we move on to the next phase is plan a visit. When we moved to Charlotte with my family back here in 2005, we planned a visit. We had no schedule planned. We just had a specific weekend that we came out. We flew out, we drove around, we started to get a gauge on the area, see if we liked it. Go ahead and do that. If you have the luxury of being able to plan a visit and spend a few days with really nothing to do here in Charlotte, but just drive around and enjoy the local activities and things to do, that can be absolutely huge. So take advantage of it. And if you are planning a visit and you do need someone to show you around, maybe some properties as well, go ahead and reach out to me. I can block off some days on my calendar too, just to really help you get to know some of the areas. So plan a visit, absolutely huge. All right, so now we're in phase 2, which is the planning phase. So this one is typically somewhere between around that 6 to 8 weeks out. So you've got your house on the market, maybe it's already under contract at that point. Now you're starting to really home in next steps as far as where you're gonna live, where you're gonna be buying. Maybe you've reached out to me, maybe we're already working together and I'm showing you some properties, and this one property or a couple of properties are starting to rise to the top. We're really starting to home in now, really starting to dial into that bullseye to make sure we get all your criteria. And we've got a couple of houses in mind and you're deciding to write an offer. So now you're in a position of power because you've got a house that's on the market, maybe it's under contract. So now you can start to really plan out close dates, the close dates on the sale of your property if you're selling one and the purchase of your new one. You want to try and align them as close as you can. Like I say, a lot of the time you can actually do it on the same day, meaning you close on one property on the sale of your house, and then you can close on the purchase right there in the same day. So it's a really smooth transaction on that. So you've got that planning phase right there. So closing typically takes around 30 days. I know in some states it can kind of fluctuate, but it's roughly around 30 days, probably around the country. But here in the Charlotte metro area, right now, 4 weeks is a typical close. Now, depending on the situation, the sellers might want a little bit extra. They might want to bump things up, but we can really say 30 days is the time for closing. So you've kind of got that now in the calendar, the window. We know when we're going to close. But if you're looking at new construction, like how does that unpack? I get a lot of people that come down here and want to build new houses, whether it's start from scratch or go ahead and buy a spec home. A spec home is something that's already been already built by the builder and it's for sale. It might be somewhere along the process, and typically spec homes, the builder picks all of the updates, the upgrades, the packages in the house, and it's going through the building process. But those houses, as an advantage, they're more readily available, meaning they'll be somewhere in the building process, so you could probably get a really quick close. Some of them are available right now on the market. You can buy them. Some of them, they might be a couple months out before completion, but they'll be somewhere in that process. Or what about if you want to build from scratch? Now, typically in our part of the country, it's a 6 to 9 month build process. So if we go to a builder, we connect with the sales rep, you like some of the floor plans, we tour the models, we're starting to really dial things in at this point. Then we actually go to the subdivisions and we actually pick out plots, lots of land. There'll typically be dirt at that point, but you'll start to get a gauge on the area, the subdivision. Maybe you're specifically looking for a lot that has a great location, backs to woods, not many neighbors around, whatever that situation is. But at this point, it's literally just dirt, and it's 6 to 9 months for a build time. So that can fluctuate. So here's a big thing that you need here, which is the contingency plan. Now here in the Carolinas, in the winter, we do get quite a bit of rain. We don't get snow so much. It does typically happen maybe once a year, really, not even. We didn't have snow last year, or this year, should I say. But typically we can get a day of snow, but most of the delays for building would become by rain. So that is something to consider. So have a contingency plan. So if we're told it takes 6 months, I would also pad that number, just so it doesn't put you down to the wire and put you in a tough situation. Now, once the house is framed and the windows are in and the roof are up, things move really quickly from them because the weather really isn't a factor at that point. But until it's all framed out, the roof is on, the windows are in, we do kind of get at the mercy to the weather. So take that into consideration, because it will lighten the load of stress level of the time frame for new construction. All right, now I'd also start to consider creating a budget just for the expenses that you are going to incur. I kind of touched on it. Try and get with your employee if you are getting transferred, just to try and take some of that load off you. But now as you're really starting to, you've got quotes from moving companies, you're really starting to paint a financial picture of how much this is really going to cost you. So create that budget. Now, I also encourage people that are moving from out of state, if you've got lot of furniture, try and get rid of as much of it as you can before you move here. Now, hear my heart, guys, here. I know everyone has their favorite furniture, things that have been passed down through family members. I'm not talking about that here. I'm just talking about general furniture. If you have the luxury of being able to sell it on a local Facebook marketplace page, it's a lot easier to sell than to move something across country. And especially if you're moving from somewhere that's completely different style. So if you're coming from California, if you're coming from like the Southwest, the Arizona style, that's going to be very different from the furniture and the style of homes that you have here in the Carolinas. So if you get out here and this style of furniture just doesn't fit the house, I've seen that happen, and they end up selling it, but they've paid a mover to move it over, they've paid storage, all that additional money, and they ended up just selling it. So just think long and hard. Keep what you absolutely must have, but if there's things that you're unsure of, seriously consider go ahead and selling that and just buying new furniture if you have that luxury to do so. All right, so the last thing I'm going to talk about in the planning phase, and this is key, so lean into this, guys. I've seen it happen first time, not in a good way. Do not buy anything. I'm talking about big purchases. Do not go out in the meantime when you're selling the house to buy a new car, finance a new car. Don't open lines of credit at all. This can seriously impact what lenders call your DTI, your debt to income, and can cripple you on your buying power. You can get literally either have an approval and no longer approved, or then you get bumped down a price point, which kind of defeats the purpose of maybe why you're moving here, to be able to afford a better lifestyle for you and your family. So this is key. Do not buy anything. I'm not talking about just going out and buying general things, but don't finance anything at all. I mean, just take into consideration if you're selling the house and you're looking to buy a house, how frustrating would that be for you if your lender tells you you're no longer approved for this amount, you're now approved for this amount because maybe you bought a really nice expensive car. That would be absolutely devastating. So do not buy anything. So phase 3 is what we're going to call the preparation phase, and this is somewhere between around 4 weeks out. So this is where the rubber really starts to hit the road. So your old house, or your current house, should I say that you're selling, this is the time you want to start doing some cancellations. So things like utilities, make sure you have your utilities planned to be switched off on a certain date. Your agent will probably tell you that on the sale of your house anyway, but you just want to be aware of that. What about things like forwarding mail? So if you've got a new house in the Carolinas, you've been working with me, you want to make sure that your mail is going to start to get forwarded. Things like gym memberships, things that you don't think that you'll forget about, unless of course you have a gym locally and it's the same gym. But things like gym memberships, so make sure you get your utilities, your gym memberships, things of that nature, your mail forwarded to the correct address. Really start to put everything in a line. Now on the back end of your sale, so meaning that you're going to be working with me on purchasing the house is obviously under contract. I have a concierge service called Utilities Connect. So I can take care of all the legwork on getting your utilities scheduled on for your new purchase of your house. So we'll go ahead and take that piece off for you. We use, like I say, a concierge level service, which is kind of important because a lot of the subdivisions, a lot of the homes in the area, you do have choices. You have different choices, maybe not with electric and water and things of that nature, but trash, internet provider, cable TV. I mean, I know a lot of people stream nowadays, but still people have options with their streaming services. So there is options out there, and there's an opportunity to potentially just save a little bit of money. Don't just go with the very first thing. So my service that I offer through Utilities Connect is they'll tell you all your options and give you prices, and then you just pretty much cherry pick. It's like an a la carte service for your utilities. All right, so we're now in phase 4, which is the administration phase. So if you're moving here from another company, maybe you're working, maybe you're doing a remote job, but I would go ahead, highly encourage you just to go ahead and ask for some PTO while you're moving. I see a lot of people here that are moving that end up leaving their old job on a Friday. Everything's done. They're closing on their new house, and they're coming here and they start their new job on Monday. Now, I know there's some situations where you just can't avoid that. You just have to do what you've got to do. But if you have that luxury, I would always encourage you just to take that week off from starting your, finishing your old job, or if you're getting transferred, just to give that week off, just so you can breathe, just so you got that margin in your life that you can just kind of enjoy the move a little bit more and just not feel as stressed out. Now, I worked with a client recently that didn't have that luxury, ended one job on a Friday, needed to be starting a new job on the Monday. Their family was still a couple weeks out. He had to come down here, and he was going back at the weekends, etc., just to help kind of close everything up where they were moving from. So I do completely get it. So there's some times that you just can't get away with it. Now, what he did, which is an absolutely fantastic idea, and I'm going to share that with you. So he didn't have that luxury. Like I say, he ended his job on Friday, started his new one on Monday. His wife, his kids were still at their old state. He was going back at the weekends for the past couple of weeks before they finally closed the sale of their house where they were coming from. When he got down here, 2-3 weeks later, he took a week off just to spend some time with the wife, the kids, just to help them get acclimated. So sometimes it's not always available, an option really, should I say, to take a week off between the jobs. But if you have that luxury, go ahead and do it. If you don't, just see if you can make a transition from the job, and then maybe a couple weeks down the road, just to take a week or so off at that point, just so you can go ahead. Like I say, it's a stressful time moving. We try and make everything as smooth and as comfortable for you as you can, but moving's not always easy, and it can cause stress. So just take that week. You don't want to be coming into a new environment really stressed. So just take that week off if you have that luxury to do it. If you don't, plan a week off just a couple weeks down the road, just so you can enjoy that move. So also in the administration phase, something that I would encourage, I learned this a couple of times the hard way personally myself and working with clients, is if you're buying a new house and you're having all that, maybe you bought some new furniture, maybe you've got a new fridge getting delivered, new washer and dryer, whatever those big items are. And you know how some of these big box stores work. They won't give you an exact time when they'll deliver, but they'll give you a window, sometime between 1 and 5, and you're in the house for all that time. I would always encourage you just to push those dates out a little bit back, because let's give you an example. So if you're closing on a Thursday morning, I'm just picking that day randomly, but you're closing on the purchase of your new house on a Thursday morning, it's not the best idea to go ahead and get all your furniture, your washer dryer, or your moving company even, or to deliver on the Thursday afternoon, because sometimes there are delays that are unavoidable in mortgage companies. When you're dealing with attorneys, mortgage companies, a seller, a buyer, everyone's schedule has to align perfectly to make sure it goes smoothly. And most of the time it does, to be honest, but there are some occasions where we lose a day, we get pushed back a day. Maybe the file wasn't sent to the lender in time, or wasn't sent during a certain period of the day, so they didn't get to the file until the next morning, which pushes it back a day. And then closing on the house, and then after you've closed on the house, then you're scrambling around calling Lowe's or Home Depot or the moving company, trying to push that close date back a bit. So I would always pad yourself. Again, this kind of keyword here is margin. Give yourself some of that margin. Don't try to do it back to back. I know in a perfect world, that's exactly how we want it to handle, but it can cause, like I say, a little bit more stress, a little bit more anxiety in there. Just you feel like you're under pressure to get everything done. Don't do that to yourself. Just take a step back. Go ahead and schedule things to be delivered maybe the next day. Maybe if it's over the weekend, maybe give yourself that weekend just to breathe and then get right back after it on Monday. So whatever that might be for you, go ahead and give yourself that margin. All right, guys, so we're at the final phase, which is phase 5, and I'm calling this one the clean up phase. So it doesn't matter if you're selling a house where you're going or you're buying a house where you're coming to with Charlotte, there's going to be a clean up phase that you're going to need to address. So whether you're selling a house, maybe get someone to come around. There's a lot of cleaning companies that do move in, move out cleaning services. It's a nice gift if you're selling a house, just to make that house that you're leaving. I know at some point in that process, the house has an emotional attachment to you because that's probably where you live for several years. But when you get kind of close to the end that you know you're leaving, that emotional attachment can start to get severed. But it's going to be a new emotional attachment for the buyers of your house. So it's such a nice gift when somebody, the new buyers of your house, go into the purchase and they go in there and the house is just clean, spotless, move-in ready. Everybody has their own dirt, so to speak, and nobody likes anybody else's dirt, but they're okay with their own. I hope that makes sense, but you kind of get what I'm saying. But just go ahead and get it cleaned. It's such a wonderful gesture for them to do. So if you're selling a house, I always encourage, even if they're not asking for it, go ahead and bless them in that way. And if you're buying a house, again, on the same side, so somebody might not be cleaning that house for you, so just go ahead and schedule that cleaning crew to come in and clean it if you don't want to do it yourself, of course. If you need some recommendation of some local cleaners, I can absolutely help you there as well. Now, if you're doing new construction, it's really a non-issue because that gets taken care of in the new construction process for you there. But go ahead and start to get that all taken care of, the cleaning side of it. So the day before closing, we do what's called a final walkthrough. So it's exactly what it sounds like. So if you're buying a new house and the sellers have already moved out, you want to make sure that we schedule a time that we meet at the property. Maybe it's just an hour or two before closing. It could be the night before, depending on if the property is already vacant. But you want to do a final walkthrough. The property that you bought, you want to make sure it's in the same condition as the time that you do the final walkthrough, because sometimes when people are moving, maybe unintentionally, if you have wood floors, they might make some scratches, they might do some scuffs on the wall. You just want to make sure, obviously some general small cosmetic items aren't huge, but you don't want to be in a situation where you've asked for the fridge and that's been negotiated in the purchase of the house, and you go to do the final walkthrough and there's no fridge there. So you want to make sure that you do the final walkthrough, because once it's closed, if you don't take advantage of the final walkthrough, it's closed. There's nothing that we can do at that point. So scheduling those final walkthroughs are keys, and also just going through all the items that you have purchased in the past, or you want to make sure let's say like instructions, warranties on any purchases that the sellers done in the past, you want to make sure you have access to it. And of course, do the same thing if you're selling a house. But if you're buying a house, you want to make sure all the instructions, if there's I'm giving you a few examples here, but like, let's say that there's a in-ground irrigation system. You want to make sure you know how to operate that. Any warranties on some ACs, anything of that nature, you want to make sure you have access to this. And it's also key, probably the two biggest things that seem to always get forgotten. People always remember keys because you're at the table, you want to exchange keys, of course, so you have access to the property. But I think a couple of things that people always forget is the fobs. So if you're moving to a new subdivision and they have like a scan card, they call them fobs, just to get into the pool, the clubhouse, the gym, whatever it might be. You want to make sure that you either give them to the new owners or that they give them to you, of course. And also garage doors, remote clickers. These are probably the number one thing that people forget because they're on the pull down visor in your car and you kind of forget about them, but you always remember after you see them like 2 or 3 days later and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to give those back. So just make sure you get the keys, the fobs for the pool or anything of that nature, garage door clickers, things like that. And of course, I would, if you have all instructions for warranties, invoices, receipts, I would just put them in a certain drawer, just pack them, put them in one of the kitchen drawers because everybody always checks the kitchen drawers, and just make sure that they have access to them. All right, so I'm gonna give something here, and it's only really for South Carolina. So in South Carolina, so if you're buying a house, let's say in Fort Mill, Rock Hill, DK, Clover, wherever it is in one of these suburbs and on the south side of town. So if it's South Carolina, here's a key thing that you have to know about South Carolina is when you buy a house, the state of South Carolina automatically registers that house at the higher tax rate, meaning like a second home, which is the 6% bracket, which people often forget about. And by default, they pay that 6%, which is the higher tax bracket. So it'll get explained to you. If you're working with me, the attorneys that I work with explain this to you, so you will be fully aware of it. But basically what has to happen is once you get in the South Carolina, you bought the house, you're going to need to change your driving license. You're then going to need to go ahead and register the car in South Carolina. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and fill out. It's a very simple one-page form just to send off. And then so you'll be paying taxes as a primary resident of South Carolina. Otherwise, you get, like I say, you get defaulted on that higher tax bracket, and you want to avoid that at all costs. So it takes about a month or so. So my key is what I always tell people is go ahead, take that piece of paper out that the attorney is going to give you and explain to you in closing. Get a fridge magnet, pin it on the fridge, and then you've got that in your face every single day. And you want to wait about a month or so, because once the deed gets recorded, you need to wait, like I would say, about 5 days before you start to tackle anything, just to make sure all the paperwork has gone through the appropriate channels. Nobody wants to go to the DMV and told that you can't go ahead and get anything registered. It's, the DMVs is probably one of the most depressing places in the planet. So you want to limit your visits to the DMV. Sorry if you work in the DMV, I guess it isn't a nice thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Nobody likes the DMV, but you want to wait a few days just to make sure the paperwork is done through its process before you change your driving license and everything, and then so you get that tax bracket. So here's kind of the ultimate guide for you. So those few steps really are key in the whole process. And again, I'm going to kind of swing back to what I said initially, which is mindset. Control what you can control, and leave a small margin there for just the uncontrollables that you just don't have the power to have any influence over, and be okay, because it's not a matter of if something that's going to come up, it's a matter of when. So if you're planning that you know something's going to pop up, you just don't know what it is, and you leave that margin in your life, it just makes that whole process so much smoother. So guys, I hope this video brought some value to you. I really enjoy making these videos and being able to present them to you so you have the knowledge to make the move. Because I'm telling you, when I moved here in 2005, and we moved from Denver, Colorado, and we did everything wrong that we could possibly do. just on that move. And we were blessed because at the time we didn't have kids. It would have been even worse if we did, but we just, we didn't know what we don't know, right? So these are the things that I've learned from my personal experience and working with a lot of clients that are moving here out of town. And these are just nuggets of gold that I have learned over the past year that I wanted to share with you. So guys, if this video brought some value to, go ahead and reach out to me if you are thinking about moving here to the Charlotte, North Carolina area. I would love to be your agent of choice. And until next time, I'll see you around town, and God bless.